little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what a week will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.
Hello everybody, welcome to Happy Little Map-ccidents. Tonight we're going to be working on a map that I already have in process, and then starting next week we're going to have our first official episode, and we're going to just see what happens. So today I'll be working on the world map of Calatai. You are more than welcome to ask any questions you have in the comments, and as I see them I will pop over and answer those. So let's begin. So what I've got here is I'm actually working on the eastern half of the world, which isn't going to be seen for quite some time, but I wanted to give it its fair due. So you can see I've already gotten almost everything fleshed out, but there are still a few gaps that I want to kind of fill in because this is going to be a poster-sized poster world map. I want to fill everything in and make sure that there's no blank spots. Obviously there's blank area, but that's okay. But you know, where there's hills, where there's fields, even if it's me just putting in a little bit of grass here or there. I've got all of the mountain ranges built out and the coastlines, and I haven't done any erasing yet. So part of what I'm working on right now is finding out where I want to fill it in with pencil, and then also figuring out what I've missed with my inks, because I've started with those. I use a micron pen. My favorite size is the 03. You may find that if you use these, you'll like an 05 or an 01. But I like the 03. It's a good medium-sized. You can also always have on hand an 005, which is the smallest. They run out faster, but you should never throw your pens away because then you can use them for cross-hatching and little happy marks that are not going to cause a lot of marks on your map. So yes, this world is pretty much well fleshed out. I've drawn it for so many years now, but so I know what's out there in the east. All the cities, you'll notice I have in pencils just scratched out names of countries, and I have little circles already set up where I'm going to have cities. Those I am going to draw on a separate piece of paper and then scan in and overlay in Photoshop, so I can make sure that I have the cities sitting exactly as I need them to sit, like I do in my computer generated maps that I make with Incarnate. There's also all over the place all of these little farmlands I've prepared for. They're all pointed towards a North Pole orient, so they'll shift from left to south, and then I'll crosshatch those as patchworks, only marking in every other one like a checkerboard to mark areas of the world that are known for their farmlands. So it's still, you know, like with a lot of maps, it has a lot of meta. You know, to say that there's swamps here, there's a lot you can do to indicate that's a swamp, but that doesn't mean it's all swamp. There could be cities out there that are sitting on, you know, really good bedrock. I've got lots of the forests built out, and I've tried to define where the forests are different. For the most part, I'm using just normal deciduous, but when it comes up near a mountain, I try to switch over to conifer. Right here specifically is a bamboo forest. Over here is not really acacia, but a very thick forest, a lot of high-rising additional trees that will stick up and out of that. Hello, Tori. Tori has arrived. Oh, yes. This is my first time doing StreamYard, so I'm learning a lot of things here. So I'm being informed that I need to say, hello, Tori. Oh, that was Anitha's comment. I'm going to learn, guys, I promise. They move so quick. Hi, Tori. Hi, Anita. Hey, Chago's here too. There's a wife here too. And if my dulcet tones get in the way of your reading and writing, just mute me. I did. My wife is across the room doing a reading sprint of her own right now, / talking in the comments. Whoops.
But you answered Anita's question, and that should have been shown.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Okay. We're learning. That's why this is the test run. Next week, I'm going to be perfect. Nothing's going to go wrong whatsoever. So then you unclick it. Okay, cool. I'm learning. I promise. All right. Okay. Let's do some drawing. So right here, I have what is an affected Eastern Empire of the Tiakai. So we need some hills. Happy hills. Happy hills. But it shouldn't all be hills. We need some grass too. Now, I think one of my favorite parts about drawing maps is not only kind of the flow that you can enter, but also, kind of embracing the chaos or fractal chaos, where you can just add random things. You can always erase it. That's why you don't want to lead with pens unless you do. It's your map. But it's one of the reasons we'll be using rice next week to build our first map. Because rice, you can use beans, but beans are a little big. Using rice when you're building a map and laying out how you want your continents to sit and how your coastlines need to sit, the rice will bounce off each other and create islands. And because they're bouncing, it adds a little bit of natural chaos to the form. That's the whole point of fractal, is that fractal chaos is not chaotic. It's following a pattern. It's just not in a way that we would consider organic. But when you start to really look at the world, even the clouds, and start to realize it's all fractal, because everything has a causality. And that's kind of what you're wanting to create with your maps too. How do your mountains affect your rivers, and how do your rivers carve your coastlines? So when I am world building, I don't normally start with a map, Anita. I started with some really bad maps to start off, and then slowly have just allowed it to grow. It was very the whole continent of Ganthic, where most of it starts, is most of the story takes place, was too European in look too, and I've had to slowly kind of remorph how it sits, and it still has a European shape to it, but even just by mixing it up and saying, well, the Spaniards don't get to be in Spain, we're going to stick them over there in Hungary. Just doing that then starts to inform how the different nations interact with each other, because how often did medieval Spain interact with Hungary? It didn't. And well, it did at times when they were trading, but just doing that can then start to twist the world in a way that gives you something to work with that doesn't feel right out of a history book. You didn't know I was a lefty? I thought that was apparent. I guess you haven't actually seen how messy my house is. My part of the house. Hi, Sparrow. Admit it. You know that we lefties are just bundles of chaos. What are you reading tonight, everybody? How about you, Anitha? What are you reading? I've been meaning to start Shogun for like 10 years now, and I just haven't gotten around to it. So, Sparrow, before you showed up, I was just talking about which micron pens I prefer. I use 03 as my main, and then was also commenting on that you should never throw away your old microns, even if they dry out, because sometimes they will pool and reconstitute. And 05s are so great for doing little scratches, especially once they do go dry, because then you can get some really nice light cross hatching. So, I'll retire them to a drawer, but I try never to throw them away. This 03 is a little dry, so I'll probably grab a different one. Microns aren't cheap, but I bought most of these in college, though you can get just starter sets, which have most of the good sizes, for $15, $20. And then you're not paying like $3 a pen. Well, I guess technically it does break down to $3 a pen, but so, question for the peanut gallery: can you hear my wife giggling from across the room or not?
You can hear me.
Trisha was gonna read. I don't think she's gonna get me done. Anything done.
There's no way I'm gonna write. Yeah, I can't write with your dulcet tones.
Got a little desert over here I started. So I do two different types of deserts, both dunes, and then I have done long dunes, which I've got over here, which you can see, which you probably saw in my intro song, which the song was loaned to me by the writer and performer, which is myself, not to brag. Dune, they're the same as a mountain, but they don't always touch. Well, they do touch in real life, but not in the drawings. What I've not done is any shading yet, mostly because I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with that. I will probably do some penciling. Because I did a orient to the North Pole for all of these little farmlands, I may also shade based on a direct overhead sun near the North Pole, which would not be possible, but what it is. The pun Happy Map-ccidents, I can't remember who thought of it. I think it might have been Katie Andrews. What's that?
I think you came up with it with Wendy.
She was my daughter was watching Bob Ross, and that was part of what got it going. Is what if I did a Bob Ross style video? Yeah. Okay, you can have it. It does sound like a kitty punch. She says she uses a lot of Bob Ross references. Yeah, over here, the ones over here, Anita, are dunes. They're just long dunes. I don't know why I did that. I think it's because over here, this whole section here is all very wasteland desert. So like down here is a scabland, like Arizona, or even like the Rift Valley in Africa or northern India. Up here are dunes because this is just kind of an old hangover from when this was basically a ripoff of Egypt. It's less so now, but it's still kind of there. And then over here, these I just wanted a different type to show that there's a longer, there's grasslands, kind of a kind of sub-Saharan, and so I wanted to do longer dunes here with kind of ridges. I haven't quite decided how I'm going to mark on this one borders. I will probably do my borders in this one in Photoshop so I can overlay dots, or I just won't, and I'll just have countries, and then it's just so I haven't really decided. Once I put in the cities, which will be photoshopped over after I draw them on a different piece of paper, I'll overlay them so I can move them around as needed, and I may do the same with the borders then. But yeah, that's probably what I'll do, and then I'll do dots. I'll have to decide whether the dots, because sometimes when you get into smaller countries, the dots will really get in the way, and other times they won't. And like up here, I've got a country that has 0 border. It just goes into the next country, so I may need to, and if necessity dictates, I'll start doing borders. I don't want the borders to get in the way. It's not a political map, and that'll help determine whatever is going to look good on the wall, because this in the end is going to be a colored map. I will take this to Kinko's and get it scanned, because then I can get a bigger scan on it. I don't know if then I will, on this original, after that, do a watercolor on it or not. I might, just for fun, but I may then also ask one of my artist friends who's in the comments here whether they can, because they have Illustrator, if they can do an auto trace. Anita, they do lack borders, but they have a mountain range between them, and they were once one country, which of course is another reason why they're fighting, because one of them split away because they stopped doing what the other one wanted them to do. You know how that goes. There's definitely going to be a lot of spoilers on this map without me saying anything, especially up here, because there are people up here that you're not going to see for a very long time, or will you? And so I have to figure out how many landmarks I'm going to put in there that won't give too much away, but will also make you really want to know what's over there. And yes, I agree, Sparrow. It would be awesome. I'm just not entirely sure. I don't know if I have the confidence to do it on my map. Once we do some of the more Happy Map-ccident ones that are us just making maps, I will 100% pull out watercolors and maybe some gouache, and we'll just see what needs to happen. Yeah. What are you working on tonight, Sparrow? Or are you just sitting there and mocking me over to Tori on your side chat that you're having? So, as an author, every time someone tells you what chapter they're on, you immediately reach for the book and you double check where they're at. That's what I do. So I see, Chaga, that you are back in Eddie now and dealing with the political intrigue there. That's good. I will be pretty soon probably getting back to working on the rules for Edifos, because I very much plan and hope to make it a playable game. So it was a game I invented 13 years ago when I was living in Seattle, and I've grown a lot since then, and it will be an even better game now. And I have to make sure, of course, that it can be played by 2, 4, or 6 people. You can say what event that is, Jago, if you want, because everybody who's currently here has passed that point now. Yeah. You're the one pulling up the rear.
If people stream it later, though.
That's true. If they stream it later.
Chapter 25, Sparrow's at.
Which would be, let's see, 25. Day of Bread. Day of Bread, I'm going to guess, without looking. Pretty sure that's 25. Almost. I was off. Oh, 25. You just passed the Manticore. That's good. I think Jago's on book 6 now. No, not really. But he could. Man, it's almost time to start the erasing phase, which is always fun, but also scary, because then you're like, oh no, I missed that spot. You have to go back in and fix it. But I also have to decide if I'm going to do my farmland before I do my first big erasing, which I probably should. So I can probably do that. What's the worst that could happen? Let me see if I can get this a little closer. So bear with me here. What's that? I'm going to use a white one because I want to get it really clean. I want to scrub it. So I'll use a white one of these right now. If I was just cleaning up something I was working on, I would do rubber. But I would like to, I really want to get it scrubbed. All right, let's see if that will get me good and close. Yeah, that'll work. Like I said, this is our test run. When I do next week, I'll try to make sure that we're not going to move the camera a whole lot. So this camera, or this stand, was suggested by Sparrow. So if it doesn't work, it's her fault. Okay, let's see if that gets us good and close. Yeah, that's all right. You're right. I need to grab. There we go. I do need to go grab my, not right now, but later on, when I will grab my horsehair brush that I got in college. Not that I would necessarily ever do something like that to a horse, but I bought it 15 years ago. So That justifies it, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do here is crosshatch in farmlands, and most important thing is that it's there. I don't have to be, I just need to stay inside my squares. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I want every other one to be in a different direction. And I have messed this up before, so be very careful here. So just a little farmland, and then I'll go in here, and well, I'll let it dry for a little bit first. We'll work on this one up next to it, and I'll come back and erase it, and we'll see how clean it looks. All right, so just did that one. I'm going to erase this one here. You can see it's just too light. So now I can go back in, now that I've got them as a guideline, and fill in cross-hatching. Now I've got farmland. Happy little farmland. Since I know that one needed more, go ahead and do this one. And it does look like it's big farmland, but it's you know, it's indicating that there are farmlands there. It's an area that is known for its farmland. Calatai is a smaller world. I remeasured it, and it's actually smaller than Mars, but it's only one of 4 realms, right? And even then, those farms would be really, really big. Okay. Yeah, we put this one over here. So, yes, I do. If you think about it in terms of like, well, I know how far apart certain cities are, and then you can figure out your latitude and longitude, and you know, like our world, how big is Earth, right? Hey, Jared, thanks for coming. So, like our world is 24 time zones, and every time zone is about, and not exactly, because we're not exactly, well, it's 24,000 feet in circumference. So 24 hours, 24,000. It's not exact. I think it's within a couple hundred of that, but at the equator, that's how wide our Earth is. And then I figured out how wide ours is, because how wide round Calatai is, because I needed to know. And I'm always someone who's saying, you know, when if you have a single landmass, why? And can you justify it? In this case, I can, because the whole the east to west, what would be the Atlantic, does cross to the next side. There's no hidden continent on the backside of this particular world. Let's see how this. Cool. Yeah. So as a whole, this land here, there is about 2,000 to 3,000 miles to this side here, which is about the distance across the Atlantic. So if I take all the map that I have here and add another 2,000 miles, I end up with a circumference just a little bit smaller than Mars itself. Yeah. How large is your map? How large is your world, Tori? Since I know you've already measured the curvature of your Earth, right?
Mm.
I don't know. I'm just making it up. I tried to convince Tori to tell me whether her wasps and figs works together like they do in our world or not. She thought it was bogging her down too much. I don't know why.
Well, Tiago, is he?
I don't know if Chiago's has figs. I know he hates raisins. I don't know what his thoughts are on figs. What are you working on tonight, Jared? I like raisins too, but I like raisins, so I'm a heretic. So Anita asked that whether Patricia had pressure on getting everything right in hers as a historical mystery writer. And when we do this video that she references here, we're going to pull out the newspaper books that we got from Spokane. It's one whole year of newspapers from the archives in Spokane. And there's nowhere to put them in the house. So they're sitting on the ground, well, not on the bottom shelf. They're pretty cool. And I've even used them to press things that got warped, like warped books. She spends a lot of times at the archives, and she's made some good friends there. So even though we're not living in Spokane anymore, they're able to pull information for her. That's been pretty cool. We're just going to crosshatch more of these farmlands. You're not wrong, Sparrow. The fact is I have done way too much world building, and do not advise that others take the road that I have taken. But do it when it is needed. If at one point you really need to know how big your world is, do the math. And while you're at it, you're probably going to do all the other planets at the same time. But if you spend too much time world building, you never get the words written, right? And that is the most important thing. because as programmers say, delivery is a feature, and getting bogged in world building, it can be anything from just enjoying it. Great, do that. You do you. But there's always the imposter syndrome of a fear of failure or fear of success sometimes too, and or the imposter syndrome alone of getting to print, and maybe people will realize that you really don't know what you're doing, right? Well, the only way you're going to find that out is if you actually do get to publication. And isn't it so much better to have done that than to have never done it? I'd hate to look back 60 years from now and go, ugh, I wish I had just published a book. It's never too late. Never too late to start. But there's always regrets. Everything you do, looking back and wishing you had done something. You know, I've regretted not taking this long to get published, but at the same time too, I'm very, very glad at what I did produce. And it wouldn't have been the same book if I had done it even 5 years ago. I did map out for the first 2 books my moon phases, and for the most part, I did it for the first 4 books are going to take place over the course of a year and a half, so I basically had mapped it, but I don't have to anymore. And that's I only did that. I only mapped my moons because it does drive me nuts when it's full moon in every shot in every movie, or the moon's rising and it's full, and so I wanted to know what time of night do I need a crescent moon to show up? And because I've got 2 moons that are both silver and red, it's going to cause different shadows. And so I can set up mood lighting a little bit, and it's going to be accurate for that one reader 25 years from now who's going to go back and map it out and figure out that Andrew was right or wrong. I did it for him or her. Great. I'm glad you went and remapped out my moon phases, but they're accurate. It's for me more than anything. But it is nice to know, when's it going to be a crescent moon, and then you get to make some weird simile about the evil red sky smiling at you or something like that. It sounds more clever than it actually is. Like I was saying, with this whole back half of the world that I'm working on right now over on this side, there's a lot of cultures over there. And they, in the past, have been based far too much on other real world cultures. And so part of me just not going there yet is because I'm waiting for them to develop a little bit in my head so they don't feel like just straight ripoffs of other world cultures. And that can be as simple as saying, well, okay, this is not the case, but you could say this particular nation's built on Iroquois nations. And you could say, well, yeah, but what if the Iroquois nations were based in Northern Africa? What would that do differently? Now you've got to spin on something to say, how do you take a culture and give it enough of a twist that it starts to feel authentic, and also not just a ripoff, right? Because everything we do is going to be taken from something that we've experienced in life. So you can't help but have a bit of emulation. But you can be responsible with that and try to capture both the essence, but also will only be pastiche when you're trying to be pastiche, right? It's a really good point, Patricia. Especially with, well, there's people here who know their horses, right, Sparrow? And the more you show that you know your horses, then when you do something flippantly on the side, they're going to trust you know what you're talking about, even when we don't, right? And that's part of building that reader trust is you're going to be doing some hand holding, and other times you're going to just say, you know what, just trust me, and just keep reading, and you earn that trust. It's part of what I've tried to work with my world building. Is I'm not info dumping, and that is by only putting things in bite-sized chunks, so that once I feel like I've earned reader trust, then I can info dump. Then you can drop your Council of Elrond. Council of Elrond should probably not have happened in the first 100 pages of Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry, J.R.R., now that we're on first name basis. But it was too early. He hadn't earned the trust of the reader yet, and so it's just a lot of information. But we all love a Council of Elrond scene if we're big old fantasy nerds. But there's times it doesn't land, and I don't know that I would even say that Council Elrond didn't land, but maybe for me at times it didn't land because it happened after a lot of other superfluous chapters before that. Because I feel in The Hobbit, when they get to Elrond, I think it worked. And maybe it's because there wasn't a whole bunch of superfluous stuff right before that. They kind of got there right away. A lot of this first pass, sometimes I'll also go in with pencils and do some shading, just so I know where I want shading to be, or where a shadow of a mountain might be that'll cause a desert to occur. Once I finish what I think I'm done with the inks, I will go back through and retouch everything again with the inks, to make sure all my lines are strong, make sure that the farmlands feel like farmlands. And I can't do whiteout. I have whiteout, and I could if this is going to be only black and white. But since I do kind of want to watercolor this later, once I've scanned it in, I will not use any whiteout on this whatsoever. For those of you who arrived late, next week we'll be doing the inaugural episode, and we'll pull out a fresh piece of paper. And if you want to follow along and do the same, you can. We bring, the only thing you need to bring to class is paper, your choice, but heavier is good and better for what you're doing, because you want to be able to make lots of marks, right? Because you're going to be doing pencil, you're going to be erasing, you're going to be using pen. It's going to scratch up the paper quite a bit. So using something really thin, it's going to tear. So if you don't care and you're just playing around, get newsprint, whatever. But bring pencils, bring an eraser that you like to use. You can have pens, we're probably not going to use pens. And bring a cup of rice or beans, because we'll be using those to lay out our continents. And then you're going to reuse that rice, so you don't probably shouldn't put it back in with the rice that's already it's been pulled out of. But we'll reuse the rice because we'll use it for continents, and then I like to clear it out and then reuse it again for our mountain ranges. And because we're using pencils, so that we can allow the coasters to reform as we need to. Because rivers are going to be affected by the mountains that we put in too, as we talk about things like rain shadows and formation of forests, and hopefully we'll also get to talk about one of my favorite examples of that and how that affected technology, and that is the Incan Empire. So I'm hoping we'll get to chat about that a little bit when we get to mountains, if that's next week, because there's some pretty cool facts about why the Incan Empire had no wheels, which didn't have wheels, but that didn't mean it was a technologically unadvanced nation. But I'm going to stop talking because we're going to save that for when we chat about it. But it's pretty cool, and it's a good inspiration for story ideas too. Do you use quill too, nibs, or do you just like to use microns and permanent marker and whatever you can find, or do you like to? I know you were playing with inks the other day. Yeah, it sure can be. Did I? And I will. There's that one guy online who's doing gouache, and he's a pen artist, and obviously has inspiration from like graffiti culture. He's a really good artist, and I really want to get and try to play with gouache because of that video. But he uses really expensive pens, but he's using like the actual brush tip pens that are really, really thick and heavy. So it's more like markers, like really expensive markers. I'd also suggest next week you have some kind of notebook nearby, one that you have set aside specifically for notes for your maps. Maybe that leather journal that you got for Christmas 5 years ago and you still refuse to touch because you actually would want to ruin a nice leather map or leather journal, and make it your map journal. And that way, when you do have an area that you want to draw in, like I have some names kind of sketched in here, I need to write these down. I have them written down, but I should write them down again just to make sure I have them. And then I can erase my pencil marks that I've got from there. But if you keep it in the same journal, then you know where to find it. I think so. That might be him. He does comparison videos. He did a $3,600 marker set against a $16 gouache set, drawing two halves of Miles Morales Spider-Man to see what the differences are. And it was such a fascinating video because it showed that even though it was really expensive, really great markers, very different mediums, he was thinking about switching to gouache afterwards because it was just so such he felt like he was, doing art again for the first time instead of just doing his job. Because gouache is it's so fascinating. I don't know if anybody's ever used gouache here, but it is watercolor with higher pigmentation, and you paint with it like you would an oil paint. And because it is a watercolor, like oil paint can be reactivated with oil, if it's not too dried out, gouache can always be revitalized and woken back up. So you can have a dry edge and come back later and do it again. And he used a $16 set from Hobby Lobby or something like that. Which of course I think then he went on to do a gouache comparison of a more expensive set. But gouache is not that expensive, and it makes you almost want to go and buy some cheap watercolors and see if they work like gouache, because it's the same idea. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just guessing, but it just seems like a really fun medium, and it's one of those things where I wish I had realized that when I was in college taking art classes. They really made you buy gouache, and like, what's gouache? Why am I buying a whole set of another medium you're not going to teach us about? Because the teachers didn't know either. But that's life. And you move on, and you pick up new mediums, and you play with them, and you say, what have I been missing? And then probably you switch back to your old medium again because it's what you're comfortable with. But you tried something new, like making a map, and you learned something from that. So I've got about 5 more minutes. So I'm going to touch up this farmland here. I hope that this hour was a chance for you to get yourself centered and ready for this coming week, which I'm sure for some of you is going to feel very long, but you know that next week you can all come back here and we'll keep working on maps. Even if you're not a writer, doing something like this can give you ideas and help you escape a little bit into not just a world someone else has written, but one that you're writing. And maybe while you're doing it, you're coming up with a story in your head that maybe you just tell yourself, but it is a story. Stories are important. According to Thiago, I'm supposed to say that you should like and subscribe to my channel right now. And next week, when we come back, we will be starting our first map from scratch. And you can follow along. You can do the exact same map that I'm doing, or you can make your own, because I'm not here to tell you how to make your map. But I will give you some hints and tips and chances and ways for you to make your own world. So good night, Thiago, Tori, Sparrow, Anita, if you're still here, Trisha, and Jared, and everybody else who comes and watches this hours from now. Thank you so much for coming, and I will send you out with a little ditty.
Happy little map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what we will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.
There we go. All right. Good night, everybody.